Today's episode of the Motor City Sports Rant is brought to you by Score, a new mobile app coming to you this August. Score is an interactive game that lets users win deals at bars and restaurants based on what's going on in live sporting events. Find new places to watch the game and save money on your bill at the same time by taking advantage of Score's unique interactive specials that give you an additional stake in the action. A Score special can be anything a location wants it to be. From 10% off an item if a team scores a touchdown to a free round of drinks if the QB scores for 400 yards. Any stat can be turned into a game. Pick the deals you want to win, watch the games you want to watch, and score deals in real time. The app will update when your teams or players record a relevant stat. When the conditions of your deals are met, coupons are sent to your device to show to your server or bartender. It's that easy. Score is coming to the App Store and Google Play this August. For more information, check them out on the web at score-app.io and follow them on Twitter and Instagram at ScoreDeals. Score. Watch games. Score deals.
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Detroit is the greatest! Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Darren McCarty comes back with Neiman in front of him. McCarty draws. McCarty in. McCarty scores! A magnum goal! Darren McCarty!
Stafford takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
What up, Internet? It's the Motor City Sports Rant on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am Jason Jarvie, your host. Follow me on Twitter at Jarvie the King. And with me every single time, I don't think there's ever going to be a Motor City Sports Rant without the John, the Doc, the Macaroon. What up?
My sperm are fantastic.
What up, Jason?
Oh, that's gross.
I figured.
You should only say that to your wife.
I was just double checking to make sure you were paying attention. What's good, sir? Great to see you this week.
Well, you know, it's another week in paradise. Nothing really crazy. I watched the Defiant Ones on HBO over the weekend.
Excellent. I was having a hard time sleeping over the weekend because of the fact that I'm around my 2 kids, my sister's 3 kids, and everybody's getting each other sick with their coughs and stuff like that. So over the weekend, I wasn't sleeping the best. So 2 a.m., popped on the Defiant Ones on HBO Go. My goodness, man, I was hooked. So right now I'm on episode number 3. I can't wait to get to the part, I guess, everybody was raving about episode number 4, where Eminem comes in and they talk about their collaborative efforts and things like that. So I can't wait to finish it.
Yeah, it's really cool. I know on Friday we watched my brother's kids. So we had 3, 8, 10, and 12-year-olds, and then we had the baby, and we dropped them off on Saturday. And later that evening on Saturday, around probably 9, I'm like, we had the first episode on DVR. It's like, hey, you want to watch the first episode of Defiant Ones? You're like, well, we can just watch all 4. If we got nothing to do tomorrow, so we watched all 4 episodes of Defiant Ones. It was a great documentary. I definitely recommend it. It's really cool. So you said you finished episode 3, or did you watch?
I'm starting episode number 3. I assume it's going to get to the part where everyone's talking about where Dr. Dre and Tyrese almost blew a $3 billion deal by almost talking about it and getting too excited. I was thinking to myself, I was like, you know what? If my company that I had was on the verge of being bought out for $3 billion and I had to wait anywhere more than 4 to 5 days, I'd be freaking out. Where would you go? I'd have to leave the country, maybe go to the Bahamas and seclude myself, give all my handlers my phones, because the excitement, I would have done the same thing. How do you not make videos, hype it up, and be like, look, I created something, and the biggest company in the world, Apple, wants to buy it for $3 billion, and he nearly blew a major corporate deal. It's crazy, right?
It might be a slight spoiler. They don't go a ton into the whole Tyrese video. They definitely, in that last episode, they talk about the creation of Beats and how that came about, and just the skyrocket that Iovine and Dr. Dre went from that point on. But
yeah, you're right. It's not only about Dr. Dre. It's also about the other half of his business partner, Jimmy Iovine. And I was fascinated at that guy's work ethic in terms of putting music together.
He reminds me a lot of you because I feel like you're just that guy who's constantly badgering people and until they give you something what you want. And I don't know, maybe Detroit Sports Podcast Network could have some similarities with Interscope. We need to find our Suge Knight, though.
Exactly.
Who could get murdered?
I was fascinated by his work ethic. I was fascinated by the fact that, he came up as an engineer and then became a music producer. And now I want to see how he kind of transitioned from the music producer to a businessman. And so I can't wait for the second half. But yeah, the Defiant Ones, HBO, a great watch. I think a lot of people are rating it very high. And that's one of the reasons why I love HBO, because I'm a huge fan of documentaries. And for the better part now of 10 years of having HBO, I love the fact that I can watch any documentary I want on demand, and all the shows are great, really. And one of the biggest shows, I guess, in the world, had its comeback on Sunday, Game of Thrones, and many people are talking about it. Many people are ranting and raving. A friend of the podcast, Justin Rose, was, going off on his Twitter page saying, make me an argument as to why Game of Thrones is not the best television series ever created. And I had to kind of rebut and say, hey, don't you ever forget about The Sopranos. My goodness. But I've never watched an episode of Game of Thrones. I know you've told me about some of these other series like The Walking Dead that have been popular, but you're a fan of Game of Thrones. I guess everybody's loving it. Did the season premiere live up to the hype, and were you excited to have it back? Because for me, I'm not into it at all. I'm not really into those type of shows. I'm more into documentaries. I'm more into comedy specials, and I'm way more into kind of newsy type stuff. Like I'm into the new documentary series from the CNN, the 90s.
Right.
That was pretty good too. I've been enjoying the first couple episodes there, but tell me a little bit, and for those that really aren't into Game of Thrones, what's the fascination with this show that everybody's raving about and hooks people on Sunday nights?
I think for some people, if you are into that whole kind of the fantasy and the knights and medieval type of thing, it's naturally you're gonna like it. It's a lot like Lord of the Rings with the different types of you're fighting on horseback, you're fighting with swords and all that kind of stuff. But there's a little bit more. There's dragons and crazy stuff in this. Crazy stuff always happens, and that's the biggest thing I think that hooks people in. Is even if you aren't like the crazy medieval person, crazy Middle Earth type of fan, if you're not a fan of that, I think the craziness that happens in the show, I think that's what hooks people.
Okay, so fill me in because I got to get my character straight. Is this the one with the Khaleesi and the one that Howard Stern rants about the naked?
Yes.
This is the show Game of Thrones with the naked woman Khaleesi that's been on and off the show and all that kind of stuff.
That was her in the first couple seasons.
Okay.
I think because she's gotten a little bit bigger.
Okay.
And since her name is out there a little bit more, I think she's scaled back all of the nude scenes.
Okay, so that's the one Howard Stern talks about. Okay, so now I'm locked in, but the reason why people like it is that it's exciting, it's well produced.
It's really
Did you hear? There's going to be like 4 to 5 spin-offs coming off of the show.
There's going to be spin-offs, but it's also it comes from a book, and the book series isn't even done, and they're actually to the point where they're beyond the books. So they've talked with the author of the Game of Thrones books, and they're ahead of schedule for him, and more than likely they have this season and next season, and that's gonna be it for this whole series, and they're gonna be done before the book is even finished. So they did a really good job, I think, with the premiere. When me and my wife were watching it last night, I kind of thought that it might be a whole lot of setup because there's so many storylines now. Back when it first started, it was really it was focused around like one family, and now it spans so many different people, and that's the difficulty I think going into these shows is that they try to set up so much that it seems like nothing happens. And while they did have to set up so much in this premiere episode, I think the way that they did it, they had enough of those wow moments that really just drew people in. And it started off with a bang. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it was absolutely nuts the way it started. And I think it ended the same way, is that it started off really quick, and then it gave you everything that you wanted, we've really been expecting for 7 seasons in the last maybe 5 to 10 minutes of the show.
See, I'm kind of bumming out now, too, because I see on Snapchat, I see on social media, this is the kind of show that people will get together on a Sunday night with their family, with their friends, all gather and watch. And for me, I haven't had a show like that to kind of get together and watch with a bunch of people. You know, the last show that I kind of got into like that was the time when there was The Sopranos and Entourage. So now we're talking about damn near 7 years ago where I haven't been just binge watching television with other people. Now, the next big event that people are going to get together to watch is going to be the Conor McGregor fight. So I'm looking forward to that. But, you know, in terms of Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, people always get together and have fun and watch it together and talk about it and stuff like that. So I do feel a little bit out of the loop, kind of out of the club, but oh well, it's one of those things where I'm not invited to the Game of Thrones party.
Hey, I'm sure you could go.
Who do you watch it with?
I watch it with my wife. Okay. I mean, my brother, he's read all the books too. He loves it. And really, you can almost, I don't think you can go more than 50 feet without finding somebody who likes Game of Thrones.
Is it the best show ever created?
I wouldn't say that. Okay. I will still, and it's hard to have that type of genre show, have it be the best show ever. One of the best shows ever that I would say, I'd stand by Breaking Bad. That was a great show.
Okay, see, I'm halfway through it. We've taken like a 2-year hiatus in terms of catching up, but everyone talks about shows like The Sopranos, shows like Breaking Bad, other type shows. But the reason why they're so popular is huge budgets to create. I'm thinking we're talking like tens of millions of dollars per season to create shows like this. So
yeah, and Game of Thrones, the cost to make it has only gone up. It's definitely shown in the TV show. You mentioned Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. That was a nuts week last week with all the press conferences. I loved it. I've never bought a pay-per-view fight. It makes me want to. I'm probably not going to because I don't have $100 just to drop on this. But I am definitely pumped to see this fight.
Well, no doubt about it. If you want to get the fight, no problem. I'll take care of that for you. It's not a big problem. So if you want to watch it, get the fellas together, have your family over. It's no problem. I'll take care of it for you. It's not a problem.
Oh, thanks, big bucks, John Macaroon.
No doubt, man. I can write it off.
Dropping it down.
Entertainment expense, brother. You know that.
Yeah, you could probably write this off for Detroit Sports Podcast Network. It's a sports event where we have to be able to talk about this kind of stuff.
Of course, no doubt about it.
And I still think that McGregor probably has no chance in this, but I just want to see him hit Floyd Mayweather. And I want to see what's going to happen.
No doubt about it. So you're telling us, and I think that's the reason why they went to 4 different places, was they want to hype the fight. And you can imagine that Pacquiao Mayweather had 4 million buys plus without Pacquiao really selling the fight. Now you got Conor McGregor and the entire MMA fan base selling the fight alongside it. So I'm thinking early estimates, you're probably going to get about 5.5 million buys. This is going to be the biggest premiere night. August 26th is going to be the night people are going to gather, watch, and talk about it. And I don't think it's going to live up to the hype, but I'm excited to watch it too. And I think they did the job. Many people are saying that by the 4th city that they were running out of things to talk about, and that's when you get in trouble, where you're dropping the derogatory word for gay people, you're using bad language. So it's one of those things where you maybe
Conor McGregor probably it seemed like he did run out of stuff because by the end it was like, I don't know. He called out New York. He pretty much said New York sucked. He said 50 Cent. He called 50 Cent a bitch. I mean,
wow.
If I want to give Floyd anything, is that he at least paced himself, and that's pretty much what he does in all of his fights. Is he paces himself.
And you can't beat that first day where you bust out a check for $100 million. That's, I think, you dropped the mic right there. I think they needed to do, if they wanted to do it and start it off right, maybe you do it like $4.99 to watch one special for like an hour and a half where they just sit, maybe at a table, have a little talk, and then maybe at the end they rile up with a little get together and make it all into one type thing. Because 4 different events, I didn't check into all of them, but I guess the purpose is to sell the fight across the world. But 4 different situations where you're trying to insult the guy, that's a little bit much when you do a world tour to promote a fight. But it'll be interesting to see how this pops off. Yeah, you're absolutely right. People are going to watch to see Ken McGregor knock out Floyd Mayweather. It's going to be a huge, massive event, and it's going to be fun to watch. So, if you want to, definitely don't hesitate about that. It's going to be the biggest event probably in 2017.
Definitely. Do you think Conor McGregor racist at all? You take anything from those comments?
No, listen. All those comments are, again, the crazy part is we all know what they're doing. I think, I'm not exactly sure if it was accurate or not, but I think they might have took the same plane over to London. So it's not one of those things where these guys, listen, they're going to respect each other after the fight. It's known they're hyping up the fight, but in essence, the reason why people want to see it is, the deeper meaning of, can an MMA fighter step into a boxing ring, and the whole, can a UFC fighter step into the world of boxing and hang with it? So if it goes past the 5th or 6th round, I think it's going to be a decision, and I don't see no judges ever making the fight happen and leading it to have Conor McGregor win it. So he's got to have to knock him out.
Unless you get those Pacquiao judges.
Yeah, you never know. You never know if there's going to be the fix, if there's going to be maybe, you know what, if they really want to try and do it, if they can coordinate it, if they can really work on it, if they can make it happen, then you know what you do? You have a draw. You have a draw, and you do it again in August. You know what I mean?
So if there's a draw or somehow McGregor actually gets a win, does Mayweather actually go for a rematch? Because he came out day one and said that he actually fight in the octagon. Take whatever kinds of boxing gloves you want, and he'll go after him. There's no way Mayweather's getting in the octagon, right?
Right. No doubt about it. No way, no how, because of the fact that within 4 seconds he'll be taken down and submitted. I mean, it's real. I mean, you think boxing's hard to learn, you know, the specifics. Imagine trying to, try to avoid a huge man trying to take you down and I'll wrestle you in the jiu-jitsu and all that kind of work. Hell to the no.
And I don't know. I'd understand him not going for any rematch if he wins, because it serves no purpose. He already made the money. It would only hurt his legacy even more if he had to go again. But I don't know, if he goes out and he actually loses, I think he has to go for the rematch.
I wondered if he would ask to do it in the octagon. That'd be crazy. But you know what? In the end, I don't think the money is going to be as huge as it is in boxing right now. So I would make sure the rematch is in a boxing ring. It's $100 million plus for another bout. I think people, if it's a draw and it's a good fight and there's some entertainment value, I'd watch it again.
I don't see McGregor going. If he wins, there's no way he goes for a rematch in a boxing ring. He'd want to do it in the octagon, because then he could prove that he can win in either sport.
Ooh, I can't wait, man. It's coming up quick. August 26th, pay-per-view, $100 in high definition. It's going to be a wild spectacle, and I can only imagine that week when the weigh-in really officially happens, when they really get to the town and they see what's going down. It's going to be a wild, fun night. It's crazy to believe that people on this network, guys like Adam, have a wedding to go to, and they got to figure out what to do, if they're going to wheel in the TV or if, one of those situations. I always try to plan to make sure that when there's a big event, I'm not going to no wedding. I don't care. You can't do that.
You can't plan that stuff, though.
Hey.
Weddings are years in advance.
And two, by the time that fight pops off, it's going to be around 11:50 anyway, right? Big fights in Vegas don't pop off right away, so you got a situation to skirt out, have some drinks, and get back to a bar.
They'll probably have to. The biggest thing they'll have to figure out is trying to find somewhere to watch a Lions pregame show on the 26th, more likely.
Ooh, my goodness. Well, speaking of the Lions, you hear the news now. News was made on Monday that the Lions, obviously, they're cloaked in some negative PR with Calvin Johnson, blasting him every interview that he can talk to people, talking about his retirement, saying, look, it wasn't worth it. I was beating my head against the wall when I was thinking about, can the Lions win the Super Bowl? And it was interesting that he was talking to the Italian press, and that's how the news kind of trickled out that, some of the reasons why Calvin really retired. Everyone kind of knows that losing took a toll on him, combined with the fact that his hands were mangled. He was injured. He had a boatload of money. So he was obviously offended at how the Lions treated him. He was terribly, terribly offended that the Lions asked him for more than $1 million back of his signing bonus. And he's come out and he's been negative towards the Lions. And I can understand it. You and I can both kind of understand it. Maybe you can argue or debate whether or not you would have done it, just go off into the sunset, and everyone knows already about the Lions. It's not news. But the Lions obviously don't like negative PR. They don't like this kind of thing, especially in this day and age with the players talking to each other through social media, through their agents. Everybody's all connected. So when you got an ex-player coming out and bashing the organization, they want to do things to kind of mend the ties and kind of move this along so that this kind of negative PR can stop. So Rod Wood, reports came out on Monday that he reached out through text messages, and it has been cordial, that he's come out and said that, hey, I want Calvin Johnson, we want to extend an invitation for him to come to training camp. And it's one of those things where you look at it and you say, ooh, okay, they might, maybe want to reconcile what they did. Maybe they want to seek some forgiveness.
Dude, first off, Calvin Johnson, this is He pisses me off, man. I was the biggest Calvin Johnson fan when he was here and when he retired. I was the biggest supporter when he retired. I remember last year you were all on him saying and giving him shit for retiring, and I supported him. And now he comes out and does this, talks to the Italian news. It's a coward move. Calvin Johnson, you are a coward. Why didn't you say this stuff right after you retired? If you truly felt all this stuff, why didn't you retire and say, I just didn't feel like the Lions are going to win? I would at least have respected him more if he would have done this last year. But it's now a year after he's retired. It's after it comes out that the Lions made him pay back some of his signing bonus, which he did not fulfill his contract. He retired. And I get that, he has to give back some of his money. This is a franchise that's paid him millions and millions of dollars to play football. I don't want to sound too bad because he should have some respect for the Detroit Lions. This is the team that made you who you were. And he just basically shat on them.
So do you think that, even though he said these comments, do you agree or disagree with the fact that, when an organization, when you put your heart and soul into your work and it doesn't kind of come back when the organization, obviously you got to remember, he came into a situation where he was working with Matt Millen, coaching staffs weren't that great, and you endure awful season upon awful season with no hope of basically, looking around the landscape and seeing any level of support realistically that you can even have hope that things are going to turn around. Now, Adam said, and I can agree with this, is that, look, he didn't have to resign. If he wanted to leave, no one forced his hand to sign the contract to stay here. So do you say that and say, look, you know what? You signed your name. You cashed the checks. So why does that give you a right to start bitching and moaning? Yeah. When you saw the work environment be that terrible, you had the right to talk to ownership to change it.
Dude signed his contract. And again, like I just said, that if he would have done it, if we would have talked about this right after he retired, I'd respect him for that. And also I would understand if he would have been more vocal throughout his career about his unhappiness with this team. I mean, you see guys now, look at Richard Sherman. He has no problem voicing his displeasure for the team that he's on currently and in the way that they're doing business. This is the first we've heard from Calvin Johnson about this. He's noticeably been a quiet person in the locker room. He hasn't been that really vocal leader. So now that we're hearing this, he's just mad that he had to give back his money, and I think he's being a little bitch.
See, I totally disagree. I think that after a year, people are going to ask you serious questions about your retirement with a year removed, with the hopes that maybe you will answer, because when you're there at the Lions, you're not going to just come out there and blast the organization.
And that's what he did.
Yeah, but but there's also stuff got added that, he had to give money back, and the early estimates were even lower. He had to give back a ton of money. And when you look at it deeper, when Calvin sits back and goes, man, look what I sacrificed. Did they not see my commitment? I was a superstar. And maybe he looks at it and says, look, I decided to stay here. That should signify to them that I was loyal to them. He thought, well, if I showed this level of loyalty in this day and age, maybe the organization would turn around and take care of me. And if I did retire because of my injuries, because of the fact that, look, we were not really close at all to championship level contention, even with Matthew Stafford, that they would take care of me and not, be such, nasty business people and try to get all the money back. So that's kind of how I feel they took care of it, was knowing that they were strictly business. They did not take care of Calvin Johnson in the way that he properly thought. And then when time passes, you can be a little bit more honest.
Well, they may not have taken care of him the way that he should have been taken care of, but he also didn't come out the way that he should have come out. He came out and blasted the entire organization. I would be so pissed if I was on the Lions right now. Golden Tate, Matt Stafford, I'd be like, dude, what the hell, man? You're saying that we're nowhere near being a Super Bowl contender? We just had a great season last year. We were actually in the playoffs.
Oh, Jason,
I get. I know you're going to give me crap for saying it's great, but they made the playoffs. And if they would have had Calvin Johnson with them, not saying I'm blaming him for retiring, but look where we were and look where we're actually trending on going. and you're gonna just come out and say, "Oh, I didn't see any direction for this franchise." You're putting the entire franchise on blast. I think if he would have came out and mentioned specifically, like the Bob Quinns and the Rod Woods, then in the upper management of the Lions organization, then I would be a little bit more understanding. But he's putting the entire organization on blast.
Okay, so
and us as a city should be pissed about that too.
See, I think many people are in support of Calvin Johnson because they will say, look, this is how the Lions treat their star players. Barry Sanders faxed in his resignation, faxed in his retirement, and people will say, look, this is a situation where Calvin was done wrong. Obviously, he put in his time, and some people will complain about, $1 million athlete shouldn't be talking about it, but
all he did was not show up in the biggest games of his career.
But you got to also remember, too, when you play for the Lions, losing does take a toll on you, and you got to remember that it takes, there's an opponent playing defense that's scheming against him. So oftentimes he would face double coverage. He would face the opponent's best cover corners, and it's a situation where you look at it and you say, it's not all his fault that there was not a level of playoff success that we all expected, but the organization, I think, did wrong by him for asking for the money back, but it's strictly business. I would have recognized it. I agree with you on some level where I would have said, look, I understand it. I'm not really fond of having them take my money back, but I completely understand it. But at the same time, maybe this was the only way that you could advocate for yourself was to come out and say, look, maybe now Rod Wood comes in, there's new management. Maybe they come in and they say, look, sorry, maybe we can't give you $1 million back, but we can highlight, future business endeavors. We can have you put a store here at Ford Field. You can come back and promote your stuff to our vast audience. So there's value in that, especially with the NFL train where everything they do usually ends up being popular. So maybe they won't, specifically hand them cash, but they'll say, look, going forward, whatever you want to do with your businesses, we'll retire your number, we'll have ceremonies, you'll have a presence here. Maybe in the future, we'll even give you a consulting gig that will total out for $1 million over the course of the next 25 years. Please come back. Should he take that under advisement and move on from being a little bit emotional and try and come back and really work out and really be a businessman? Because I would take the meeting not with the notion of, I want to come back and retire my number and all that. I would say, look, you know what? Okay, I understand. You took back, let's say, $1.5 million. I want to be a consultant for the wide receivers, or I want to be on the staff at some point down the line in a couple years. And I want, no matter what, I want to be, given a big time contract where it'll total out for more than $1.5 million over the life of it. And then you get it back, you recoup it, and all is forgiven. And you say, you know what? Okay, fine. You can put my, new business, you can advertise it for me. You can do this, this, and this. I would come in and have a business meeting with the Lions and say, look, water under the bridge. I wasn't happy. Probably didn't handle it the best, but that was the truth. This was what I was feeling. Let's handle some business and let's work together.
Well, the ball's in his court. It's all going to depend on if he wants to work with the Lions or not. And the only one who's going to decide that is Calvin Johnson himself.
Do you think he comes back? Is he a presence at training camp? I mean, if you're already going to go to Oakland and you're going to make yourself known, that's a little bit bogus. It's nice to see. It would be nice to see Calvin with the Lions and working with them.
I think it's too early for him to come back. I think unless this whole meeting comes back and it goes swimmingly, I think you're probably not going to see Calvin Johnson this year.
Will the fans embrace it? Do you think that, what do you think the pulse of the fans is? Do you think that they're on Team Lions or Team Calvin?
More than likely, the fans are on Calvin Johnson because he's one of the, if not the best receiver that we've ever had in this history. And he is the most recent player. So he's the freshest in our mind. So Calvin Johnson will, for a while, be on a pedestal for Lions fans. And unless things go even more south, I think he'll probably end up coming back with the Lions. And like you said, I think he'll have some sort of role, whether it's just trotting him out and, having him retire his number, whatever. He'll be a part of the Lions at some point.
When will you forgive Calvin Johnson?
He needs to come out and thank the fans because we're the ones who really made him who he was. I mean, obviously he's an amazing athlete and he would have been great anywhere he went, but he needs to come out and I'd say apologize to the fans of Detroit because you just blasted the city. Once he does that, I'll embrace him.
Okay.
As far as it is, though, I don't know. I am starting to question, though, his Hall of Fame status. Like,
Really? The numbers speak for itself, don't you think?
The numbers, though? The numbers? Where does he sit? Do you know where he sits on all those all-time numbers for yards and touchdowns?
Well, okay, total yards, let's say top 10?
No.
No, really?
I don't think he's top 10 for either of those. Like, and part of it is because he retired early, which I'm not going to fault him for, but I don't think he's top 10 for yards. I don't think he's even in the top 20 for touchdowns. So really, I think the big case that you have for him to be in the Hall of Fame is just that he is a freak athlete and that he was a great wide receiver, if not one of the best in the league when he was in the NFL. And you also look at his the season where he broke the yardage record. So I mean, I think those are the two big cases that you put for Calvin Johnson to be in the Hall of Fame. They're gonna have to go off that. And Barry was a no-brainer because he was like second all time in yards when he retired. Calvin Johnson, nowhere near that.
Okay, I recall debating this and saying that he's definitely not a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, but overall, in terms of his numbers, in terms of he had the season where he had the most receiving yards ever, so he's up there in terms of top wide receiver numbers. And I really believe that, in his prime, I think he's one of the top 5 receivers of all time. Maybe not in the top 3, top 4, but at least in the top 10. I think he'll be in the Hall of Fame. The problem is, though, and I do agree that a lot of times numbers, we're looking at him compared to other top wide receivers, but when we look at it in terms of the lack of the playoff success, no playoff victories, that's really unbelievable in terms of the fact that he did have some good performances in the playoffs. He wasn't a total stiff, but in terms of the fact that the team and the Lions didn't have that much success, definitely will play into what people will think regarding his Hall of Fame induction. But I think he'll be there.
Yeah, Calvin Johnson on the all-time receiving yards list. You said, what did you say?
I thought top 10.
Top 10, that's incorrect. You want to take another guess?
23rd.
Still too high.
Really? All-time yardage. Okay.
29th.
29th. Okay.
He's below guys such as Jason Witten. Brandon Marshall has more. Hines Ward. Let's go to touchdowns, because I know touchdowns I feel like is even worse.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're making the case Calvin Johnson will not be in the Hall of Fame and doesn't even deserve to be there.
I don't know. I'd like to say probably not first ballot, but he probably will make it eventually. He is 22nd on touchdowns, so he actually is a little bit better.
All right, let's take our first time out. I can see where you stand regarding Calvin Johnson, and you're not really happy with how this has entirely played out, whereas I'm a little bit more understanding and compassionate, and I think he will come back. And my opinion is, around the time of training camp, if he is a wise businessman. Now, if he is a little bit too emotional, if he is a guy that doesn't know how to put his ducks in a row, then he will stay away, because I think it's in his best interest. It's never in your best interest to burn a bridge with a powerful NFL organization, and especially the likes of the Lions, where they're very loyal to their own. And I think once the PR hit and once people started realizing, of course, they weren't even surprised that the Lions took back his money. So they were saying, look, this is typical Lions. This is how they run their franchise. I think a lot of people are on Team Calvin, and realizing that the organization might help you out, I think it might even be a smart business move to say, you know what, let me align myself with the Lions. Let me, maintain contact with them, because it could be in their best interest. So,
well, we'll see what happens, and we're going to take a break, come back, talk some Tigers, maybe something else. But it's the Motor City Sports Rant, the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Jason, I want to tell you about our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I were first starting this project, we were searching for a place to host all of our recorded audio, and thank goodness we found Podomatic.com. When we record a podcast, and now we've recorded about 500 to 600 of them, we take the audio and upload it to Podomatic.com, and that way we generate links so that our friends, family, everybody that supports us can find and listen to our podcast without any problems. If you're starting a brand new project and you're serving the landscape and you're wondering, where do I put my podcast? Doc and Jock and all the hosts here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network recommend Podomatic.com.
Bitch, you thirsty, please grab raps right. My crib's lurking, don't die tonight. I just wanna dance with you, baby. Just don't move too fast, I'm too crazy, man. Down the air.
Motor City Sports Rant, Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I think it's time to talk about our awful baseball team, the Detroit Tigers.
Well, first off, Jason, great choice. You know me, always a fan of the North. Great choice for the bumper.
Yeah, you know what the North is?
No, I do not, actually.
You have no idea, John. You are fake.
What is it? Hit me up.
I don't know either.
You don't know either?
I just like the song.
Well,
You're the one who's coming in and going, oh, yeah, I love the North.
I got to act like I'm in the know. Come on now.
You're too old for that, John.
Now, Jason, this could be one of the greatest second halves in the entire history of Major League Baseball. After the All-Star break, the Tigers came back that Friday and played an awful, horrid game versus Toronto. And Brad Ausmus, hell, maybe he realized, you know what, maybe the fans are right. Maybe everyone that was talking that this team doesn't have a pulse and the way they played on Friday, maybe I got to have a meeting. Look what happened. 2 straight victories versus Toronto. They played a lot better brand of baseball, and this could be the stuff of legends. Brad Ausmus can be featured on 30 for 30 as the manager who gave the greatest team meeting performance of all time. And hey, you know, I know that you've jumped off the bandwagon. Most people don't believe in this team anymore. They're just waiting for the trades to take place. I ran a poll on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. Overwhelming numbers of people voted that all they're waiting for is the trades. What's going to happen next? And I look at it and I say, look, you definitely needed to have a team meeting, but it needed to happen like 4 weeks ago. Too little, too late. I don't think that it's going to prevent Justin Wilson or JD Martinez from being traded. I don't think it's going to stop the speculation. We can kid and joke about the meeting and stuff like that. We're going to talk about it, but at the very least, you realize that performance that we saw on Friday was uninspired, was terrible, and I think probably one of the worst performances I've seen in quite a long time.
John, I was just waiting for you to play the dial tone drop because that's how I felt as you were introducing Brad Ausmus and this second half of the Detroit Tigers season. They've already failed. It's over. We've seen what they are this season. Like you said, it's too little, too late. It would have been one thing if we would have heard about this in early June or late May of Brad Ausmus having a team-only meeting that, you know, trying to fire this team up. But it's too far gone. And I'm not saying that it's too far gone that they're just going to completely tank. It's this team isn't going to, they're not a world championship team. They're going to have these performances where they win 11-1. And because they do have hitting, and sometimes they get pitching, but they don't get it consistently enough. It's how many times do I have to come on here and say that this team is just going to be a roller coaster? And I say that they've already failed the second half because probably the best trade out there has already come and gone. And I'm not sure if it was rumored last week of the possibly trading with the Cubs. Did we talk about that last week or no? I know we talked a little bit about trading. I'm not sure if the Cubs were in that scenario, but I know initially it was that the Cubs actually wanted Fulmer from us.
Yeah, I think we talked about a lot of things that were going on in terms of the future of the organization, and I think for sure I got your input on the thoughts regarding trading Michael Fulmer. And
I know the Tigers organization probably wanted that deal to be for Verlander, but I think we could have gotten so much more because the deal was the Cubs and the White Sox. The White Sox gave them Jose Quintana, and they got their best pitcher, their best hitter, and then a couple more prospects. And I think we probably could have done just as well, if not more players. I think you could have gotten all those players and throw in a Kyle Schwarber and for Michael Fulmer. And I think this team would have been much better off for the future, at least.
So what do you make of Brad Ausmus and his ornery nature because of the fact that everybody was questioning him like, okay, you had a meeting. What was said? What'd you guys talk about? Because you played an unbelievable game on Saturday, and it was an unbelievable performance. You had great numbers. You had great effort. Players looked inspired. You scored over 10 runs. And so he comes out, and he's just like a little bit crotchety, and he's like, none of your damn business. If I wanted to let you guys know, I would have invited you. And you say to yourself, my God, why such a crotchety way of talking to the media when everybody knows that, we're all on the same page trying to see whatever it's going to take for the Tigers to have success. And so I looked at it and I go, you can tell Brett Ausmus is feeling the heat, because whenever you watch the talk shows or listen to great podcasts like this, people are only really saying right now 2 words in terms of the Tigers, and that's fire Ausmus. And I think that's the fastest way to start this rebuild. But I can understand he's a little bit crotchety, but I don't think that's the tone you want to take, because I don't know if he's self-aware or not, but he's not likable. The team is really not all that likable. And many people are, when we talk about the Tigers, waiting for this team to be rebuilt.
I think he's upset because he has no idea what this team needs. Finally, halfway through the season, we're finally having a team-only meeting. And then they go out and win, and probably going to come out in the next couple games and have another one of those, classic, awful Tiger games that we've seen all season long. And it's just going to be, what are we doing here, man? What's this team doing? We talked about this in our team-only meeting, and now we're right back here. So you can't have these team-only meetings every single week. You do it, and I think it's been talked about when Jim Leland did it. He had the famous outburst, and then they did really well. Unless this team does go on some amazing run, it's you can't do that every week. You pretty much blew your shot right there. And if you didn't get your intended results, then it's over. You've pretty much that's your trump card. That's the last thing that you can do. And really, it is just waiting for the hammer to fall, Brad Ausmus to be gone, and hopefully to clean house.
Okay, so you look at it and you say the same thing. Brett Ausmus is a guy that's trying his absolute best, really working with a flawed lineup, and everybody's waiting to see. And in essence, you don't really need it to be a rocket scientist to figure out what was said. It had to be like, look, everybody on the outside is against us. People don't think that we have any success, that we're not going to be successful in any endeavors. Look, you're going to hear these trade rumors and things like that. But no matter what, we got to stick together, and absolutely we have to give effort. That's all that was said, was stick together, let's play hard, let's play for each other. Don't go out there and perform like that in front of a paying audience. That's all that it was. Maybe loosen up, have some fun, and no matter what. And you look at it and you say, hey, if it needs to be said every once in a while that we don't do these kind of things, then it needed to be said. It's just needed, you don't have to be so secretive about it. You don't have to give the fine details. You can give a grand scheme, just like I did. People walk up to Brad and say, hey, what'd you guys talk about in the meeting? And you could say, well, it was obvious our performance Friday was eye-opening. We just had to reset a little bit, and I talked with the fellas about playing a lot better, and thankfully they responded. And that's all you got to say. You don't got to go into the minutia. If they want more details, say, private team meetings, we're not going to go into that much more details.
I mean, if he does reveal what he says, though, then once they go back and revert their ways, though, all the media is going to do is say, hey, you guys had that meeting, and now you're back to where you were. So you're pretty ineffective as a manager. What comment do you have on that, Brad? And that's what it's going to be. At least with this, he's saving a little bit of face.
So do you give them stock or give them credit for at least performing well versus Toronto the last couple games?
I give them zero stock. They're not going anywhere, John.
Really?
And I told you a couple episodes ago, and I'm telling the fans of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, August 1st, mark it on your calendar, Al Avila, Brad Ausmus, they're going to be gone. After the trade deadline, I think they're keeping them around to at least guide them through these next 2 weeks, and then we're going to be rid of them, and it's going to be a whole new era for the Detroit Tigers.
It's one of those things where I know everybody's waiting. People like Buster Olney are kind of evaluating and commenting on. Everyone's talking about trading Miggy, trading Michael Fulmer, and I've said it quite a bit, and I truly believe it. The fans are ready for a rebuild. They would understand if they traded Fulmer or Miggy. It's not realistic. It's not likely to happen. But you and I can sit here logistically and realize that if you want to say who's going to be traded, Justin Wilson, JD Martinez are 2 names probably not going to be here in August because they're going to draw attention and they're realistic in terms of who you can get back for them. So those 2 guys, but I don't hate on the speculation. I'm not going to sit here and cry and go, no, you can't trade anybody. There are no untouchables on the Tigers. It's a team that's flawed, and we need to rebuild and start looking to bring up some youthful talent and find ways to get back. But right now, as we sit, we're about 5-6 years away from any realistic coverage.
Yeah, and I agree with you on Justin Wilson and JD Martinez, and I would nobody should be untouchable. I would love to unload the contracts of JV and Miggy, but I just don't think there's anybody who's going to take that kind of contract and give you something in anything in return. So I would add Michael Fulmer onto that. I'd put Ian Kinsler on that, and really anybody else that's valued, maybe even Alex Avila, because he could probably go somewhere. Somebody needs some catching help for a postseason run. I'd put everyone on there and try to get as many top prospects and just build for the future, because that's the way to do it.
No doubt. I'm still invested in watching the Tigers. I find that, this is a team that is underachieving. They are probably realistically a 500 team. When you look at it, about an 81-win team. They're playing like a 75-win team. So you look at it, how do you bridge the gap? You could fire the manager. They probably won't. But in essence, you do got to get solid performance. It's a huge week. 4 games on the road versus Kansas City. You need to get 3 of them at minimum, no doubt. You got to get 3.
What do you think they do? I know you say they need 3.
500. They're going to go 2-2. I think that it's going to be very indicative and telling what Jordan Zimmerman does that first performance. Boyd goes on Thursday. So those are the 2 losses I off the bat go. Jordan Zimmerman, Matt Boyd might be the 2 that get losses. You hope that Verlander, Fulmer can come back and reclaim some success and more consistency. So it's going to be an interesting week, a telling week. But no matter what, I don't see a scenario in which they avoid a trade by July 31st.
They just need to unload, man. It's time.
It's time, huh?
Time. Stop watching the Tigers. Stop watching for a couple years. This is going to be some bad baseball.
That's the consensus, my friend. It's going to be some bad baseball, but we'll be here to break it all down, to take the pulse of the fans. You can follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. We're going to continue to let it rip. Thanks to our new sponsor, Score. Definitely check out their website. A great new app coming in August, and we're grateful for those that support us. Check out Score Deals on Twitter. It's going to be a great app that will let you interact with your sports watching habits when you go out to the bars around town. Good stuff, sir. Look forward to next podcast.
Yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit more Lions. That's a definitely more positive vibe for the Lions for me.
You getting excited? And
because they're 0-0.
And it's about that time. Fantasy Nerds is going to be debuting back in August. Looking forward to that. Are you getting your league situated? Have the new rules or rules been talked about for the Slackjaw League?
We are. We're getting ready. We actually just sent out a text message to let people know about their keepers. I think I'm starting a new league. I'm starting a dynasty league.
Nice.
So that should be fun. I'll probably talk about that on the podcast whenever that comes out.
Definitely. And you can check out all the great podcasts on this fine network every single day, 24/7 on demand. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Greatly appreciate it.
Yep. For John, I'm Jason. Peace.
Okay, nice idiot. F you. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.